Welcome to Y Nada Más, a Real Madrid podcast.
All right, everybody, what is going on? This is Eric Rivera, and this is the Y Nada Más podcast. I am back. It has been quite some time since we actually did a show, I'm back. The season has started today, actually, when I'm recording this. We just had a victory in the Champions League. The Champions League officially kicked off today. We're all excited because the team has gone so far in this season. The team is undefeated. Essentially, they have not lost any of their games either in the league or in the Champions League. So let's, hopefully not jinx that by, saying that on the podcast, but hopefully they continue doing it. And they've done it in a very Real Madrid way, making us suffer a little bit, looking sometimes a little shaky, but then coming up and then coming up in a big way and showing us what they're capable of. That has been the story. Of course, there has been all sorts of things since I've been gone. Obviously the crazy close to the transfer window, Barcelona doing its things, a lot of big name players going to the Premier League. Obviously, Casemiro left. So a lot of things that I, want to talk about, a lot of things that I might rehash on a little bit, but obviously I'm going to try to keep this pretty quick and up to date and move into where we are now. So once again, I am your host, Eric Rivera, and this is the Y Nada Más podcast. Like I said, it's been a while since we actually did a podcast because I was away. I was actually away for work. I was in Europe, and I was trying to do the podcast and try to record some content while I was over there, but it was absolutely impossible to do so because my job, some of what my job does is I'm on a ship a lot of the times, working for a cruise line, and so what happens is you don't always get the most reliable service, especially for large video files or audio files to upload. So wasn't that easy to get it done. I also had tons of other things that I needed to shoot for work. So really, that's where I was, So if you've been a long-time listener, that's kind of where I was. If you're new, awesome to have you back. This is actually the second or third season that I've done this podcast. And I always try to keep it pretty regular on the weekends, but I'll fall off every now and then because of my job and then the job of the people that are with me on the team. So we don't do this, obviously, just to let you guys know we do this. I'm a huge fan of Real Madrid. I don't do this professionally. I've been in radio and things like that professionally, but this is not what I do professionally. This is not my regular job. I do this for the love, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This is a fan podcast. I'm not a talking head. I am not an analyst. I just have been a longtime fan of Real Madrid since 1996. So that is what this is about. So I'm back essentially. Like I said, I was in Europe. I got a chance. I was actually in Helsinki, I think 2 days, unfortunately, before Real Madrid played Eintracht Frankfurt for the UEFA Super Cup. So I missed that by just 2 days. I was also in Istanbul, which was going to be where the final of this year's Champions League or this season's Champions League is going to take place. So I missed that by a couple of months. So I was really, hitting some really cool spots. Unfortunately, I couldn't hit Spain. I couldn't go to, see Madrid, and that is still on my list of things to do. Coming up, I might, be in Italy, might catch a game when I'm out there, a Serie A game, as I also am a fan of Serie A, if you've listened to the podcast. And I think Serie A might be one of the more exciting leagues this season, as there really is a lot of teams that can fight for that title. I believe right now Atalanta, as of the recording of this podcast, might be in first place, I think it is, followed by, I think, maybe Roma or Napoli. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are fighting over there, so really interesting to see how that's going to go. So if you are a first-time listener, you're all listening on the podcast. This is the audio version of the podcast. There is also a video version of the podcast. And if you are watching the video version of the podcast, vice versa, there is an audio version of the podcast. Check us out on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever podcasts are found. You can check us out there. And if you are listening, if you are watching, we are, if you're listening and you haven't want to watch the video version, we're on YouTube at Y Nada Mas. I think it's at Y Nada Mas. I mean, youtube.com/Y Nada Mas podcast is what I think it is. So that's where we're available there. And on the ticker here, you can see on social media, available on YNM Podcast on Instagram, at Y Nada Mas Podcast on Facebook, at Y Nada Mas Podcast on Twitter, which is where I am most active. Just trying to get through all that social media stuff because very quickly, because I really want to jump into really what's been going on since I've been gone, and I kind of want to touch on it. We had Casemiro leave, which was very sad for me. Love Casemiro. It definitely spells out sort of the death knell of, I would say, the CMK era of Casemiro, Modric, and Kroos. Obviously, Modric is showing us some spectacular, still continues to be in spectacular form. I mean, that guy just doesn't age. Today, he looked phenomenal. He looked great, I thought, against... who is it that we played today? Oh, my God. Against Celtic, I'm sorry. He looked great against Celtic because I'm thinking about all the other games. But then he looked phenomenal, scored a banger against Celta Vigo. He's been just a phenomenal player, and it's really going to be sad. I think that will be the player I will shed a tear for when he leaves. I was sad when Casemiro left. I'm sad when Marcelo left. I was obviously sad when Cristiano left. But the two guys that are really going to make my heart break my heart when they leave are definitely Luka Modric. If you're a follower of this podcast, I named my son Lucas after Luka Modric. And I would have named him Luka if my wife didn't step in and say that she didn't want to name him Luka and wanted the Hispanic version, which is Lucas. So it would have been Luka. But anyway, that is the reason. And I've been a longtime fan of him, and he's just proving everyone right that has been longtime fans of his. He's just not aging. He's aging like a fine wine, aging very well, and continues to look absolutely phenomenal. So, but losing Casemiro, I think was kind of that precursor to, obviously, it's funny because he's the youngest out of the three. If we consider Toni Kroos and Luka Modric and Casemiro. Casemiro is actually the youngest out of the three, and he's the one who left first. So that's the really interesting part there. But Casemiro, I think, obviously a lot of things have been said. I think it really was probably a good deal for Real Madrid to, sell him for, what was it, 80 million when they were, the likelihood of getting a deal like that later on with Casemiro was probably not going to happen. In addition, the pay that he was going to get at Manchester United was something that I don't think a lot of players would turn down, especially knowing that they were slowly being phased out with the arrival of Tchouaméni. And at first, I think a lot of people were worried about how it was going to play out if, really Tchouaméni was going to be the guy to substitute Casemiro. And if anything, he has shut down those doubts immediately. Absolutely immediately. He has been an insane acquisition since we got him. But it took him a couple of games, and he didn't even look bad in any of those games. It just took him a couple of games to sort of get into his own rhythm. And now he's just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, he's the other day against Real Betis, in the game against Real Betis just this past weekend, I think he had something like 6 out of 6 aerial duels won. And then I think out of the 13 ground duels he had, he won 10. And it was in the first half that he got 10 out of 10, which is insane. He's been a wall in the midfield. Camavinga as well, I think has been, he's just a burst of passion and drive. And I think both of them are so elegant on the ball. And Tchouaméni brings something that Casemiro unfortunately didn't have. Casemiro was a wall. Casemiro was a gritty player, recuperating the ball, intercepting balls, recovering. But there was always that thing I think sometimes the complaint, I'd complained about it sometimes, where, Casemiro, when he got overexcited or he was really excited or he was in the, the throes of the excitement of the game. You would see misplaced passes. You'd see a lot of errant, just kind of crazy losses of the ball. He'd go for shots that were, really, really low percentage shots if we're going into that idea of stats, so there were a lot of things that he did that obviously weren't the best. But he was an absolute ball winner. He had an attitude like no other. And he was, of course, a huge part of this team in that he had carried this midfield for so long. Not carried as in the sense of carrying Luka Modric and Kroos, but when it comes to that defensive midfielder position, he really did carry that position because there was nobody else that we had to come in and step in for that position. Now, the funny thing is, I think at the first time I remember hearing about Casemiro leaving, the one thing that worried me is, what's going to happen. Essentially, we brought in this guy, Tchouaméni, to deputize Casemiro, or at least that's what we thought was going to happen, and that didn't happen. Right? Or now we're selling Casemiro, and so now you kind of have a similar situation where you have Tchouaméni, really the only one that is I would say, an out-and-out defensive midfielder. But Tchouaméni brings so many other things to the table that we've seen. I mean, his passing is on point. Obviously, his ball recovery. He's a young kid. He's strong. He bullies guys off the ball from what I've seen so far of him. And then not only that, it's the ball progression that he has. When he keeps the ball, he controls the ball. He's good in possession. He can take the ball forward and then distribute it, and even almost become part of in going to the final third and even become almost like a playmaker. He showed that to us in that game against what was it? Was it Celta Vigo? Where or was it Espanyol? Sorry, where he does a beautiful 1-2 with Valverde and ends up setting up the through pass to Vinicius to score. So obviously, he's been, he's worth his weight. He's worth what we paid for him. If anything, I think as time goes by, people are already saying this. He might have ended up cheaper than we expected it to be, and it might have been a way better deal than people thought it was going to be. So obviously the other situation that a lot of people are talking about is this issue with the number 9, and I agree with everyone. I mean, I agree with everyone that we don't have a quality backup number 9. We have issues in the right wing, essentially playing Valverde as a right winger when that's not really his position, essentially playing hoping that Rodrigo or Benzema Rodrigo or Eden Hazard are going to be the backup to the number 9 position, which is crazy. Mariano didn't leave, Asensio didn't leave, all these things that happened. There was a lot of things on the market. Players were offered. And in the end, I think, so here's my thoughts on that before I jump into this Champions League game and talk about, kind of what happened and how that plays into, I guess, the transfer strategy. Once again, I always feel like Madridistas are sort of this self-hating group. We tend to do that a lot. We tend to lose our minds. And especially, I think part of it was to losing our minds in the transfer market and the fact that Real Madrid didn't sign anybody in the transfer market, and that really in the end, Rudiger and Tchouaméni became our only signings. The interesting thing is, to me, this is a team that at the end of the day won the Champions League. This is a team that at the end of the day won the UEFA Super Cup. They won the LaLiga. They've done everything, pretty much everything that's asked of them except for the Copa del Rey, which obviously I hope this year we can win it because it's something that is, we always run into just bad luck in that cup, and I would really like to see us lift it up. But this is the same team that won the Champions League. Now, obviously, the way we won it isn't something that I think the one thing about that Champions League from last season is something that is going to be impossible for anyone to duplicate. Think about it as, the three-peat of the Champions League to me, and I think I've said this in a podcast, last season's Champions League win was so insanely chaotic and last minute winners and come from behind victories, consistent come from behind victories, it really is a shot. It really was lightning in a bottle. It was essentially something that I don't think any other team is going to be able to repeat. And leave it to Real Madrid, a team that obviously has so much history, to be almost the perpetual underdog during the entire season last season, even though obviously they're a team with such big history, but nobody expected that team to win and do anything. And, they won it by the skin of their teeth. So, yes, I understand the people that are saying, we won the Champions League with this team. We did all these things with them. They won a lot. But let's be real. It wasn't the easiest way of winning, and it wasn't the most convincing way of winning. We still won it, though. We still wanted a win. A win is a win. To quote Don Toretto from Fast and the Furious, it doesn't matter whether you win by an inch or a mile. Winning is winning. It doesn't matter whether it's one goal or it happens in the last second or you had less possession. As much as Xavi and all these, Barcelona sycophants want to talk about playing beautiful football and whatnot, it doesn't matter. Possession doesn't matter. Stats at the end of the day don't really matter. Like all the stats, they fly out the window when you really want to talk about who ends up winning the game at the end. The only stat that matters is the scoreline. And Real Madrid ended up on the positive end of the scoreline whenever it needed to, right? So that is essentially what happened in this Champions League, and we ended up taking it home. So, yes, I understand that it wasn't the best way to win. So I understand people saying, you got to make a team better, especially given how we won that Champions League. There's got to be improvements made to the squad. Obviously, you got all this money coming in. You saved money from the Mbappe saga. Let's see what we can do with this. And then it seems like there were different offers, different people were thrown at. I mean, I for one, liked the idea of somebody like Raúl de Tomás. I liked the idea of maybe a Minguri. I liked the idea of maybe a Serge Gnabry. I even liked the idea of possibly somebody like an Edinson Cavani or Edin Dzeko, like guys that were sort of on their way out. I definitely think players that like those players I mentioned, those guys that were sort of, kind of, they're up there in age, they're kind of on their way out, but they still have opportunities to give. Those guys wouldn't mind sitting on the bench and occasionally coming in to deputize somebody like Benzema. And I think that's something that, needed to be taken into consideration, because if not, I don't think you were going to get a young gun that's kind of looking for minutes is going to sit there and be like, I know I'm going to be second fiddle to Benzema. And obviously with Benzema being, in the running, or at least, a shoe-in essentially for the Ballon d'Or, and, one of the best strikers on the planet right now is going to just, they know that they're going to be sitting on the bench. So I think it was a very hard part negotiating there for that. And so you have to take a look at that. I don't know if a lot of players were going to do that or go for that deal, even with Madrid's, pedigree, so I understand why it kind of didn't happen, but I also feel like there were other players, like let's say Raúl de Tomás and all these other guys, and some of the older guys that probably would have gone for it. And so all this talk about it not being, they didn't want to repeat a Jovic situation, they didn't want to repeat a Mariano situation. I don't know. It doesn't completely sit well with me, because at the end of the day, you need somebody there that can step in. And so, fine, don't get these guys, but get somebody else that can possibly step in. Get somebody else that can possibly at least deputize and come off the bench and do it. And that's kind of what we did not see, even considered, and it's something that we desperately need, especially considering that if we speak about today's game of Real Madrid versus Celtic, now we're all worried about what's going to happen with Benzema. Now, as of 9:54 p.m. Eastern time here in the United States, the last thing I heard on El Chiringuito was essentially that it doesn't look like it's going to be a big deal. It doesn't look like it's a big issue or a bad injury. So who knows? But I'm probably sure that, they better bench him against Mallorca, considering Mallorca is not playing well. And, and considering Eden Hazard, thankfully Eden Hazard, and, which I think was one of the best things that happened today, was Eden Hazard getting the goal, playing the way he did. And let's be real. I think, as Celtic was not an easy team, considering that they're number one, obviously, in the Scottish Premiership. They are a difficult place to go to because they are so fervent. They have such a fervent fan base that is going to make any venue uncomfortable. And they showed that they were, and the team was an uncomfortable team at the beginning in the first half. That first half looked more like a Celtic first half dominating than Real Madrid. Real Madrid Real Madrid, we didn't see them really playing the football that we saw them so beautifully play, so calmly play, and so dominantly play against Real Betis, which I think Real Betis, if anything, is probably right now, aside from Barcelona, is the team that has looked the best so far in LaLiga to me. And that was the hardest game that I think we were going to face, at least at this stage in the competition, in La Liga at least. And we looked like we absolutely were bulldozing them when they couldn't get out of they couldn't put really anything together. And the only goal they scored was, I really think, was a defensive lapse and a time where maybe one of the first times that we've seen Courtois not come up with an amazing save, and sort of come up with something, to save us in the last second. But besides that goal, the rest of the game was ultimately Real Madrid's game. It was a dominant display. Celtic, on the other hand, it wasn't a dominant display until the second half, where it really seemed like they started to lose steam. I think that's natural for some of these teams, especially a team like Celtic that hasn't been in the Champions League. I think it's been over 5 years since they've been in the Champions League. They were going to come out guns blazing against Real Madrid. They're in Glasgow. They're going to, they're pushing themselves to the limit. They want to surprise the European champions, so they came out guns blazing. They looked solid in the first half, but that is ultimately going, if you don't strike while the iron is hot, essentially, right? What's going to end up happening is what happened, which it seems like as they started to lose steam in the second half, Real Madrid really started to, their calmness, their experience comes in. We've weathered the storm. We've weathered these young guys coming at us, and now it's time for us to step on the gas, and that's exactly what they did. Vinicius, Valverde with that crazy, beautiful ground pass all the way across the box, essentially from the right side of the field to the left side of the field, finds Vinicius. Vinicius just basically has to tap it into the bottom right-hand side of the net, and that's exactly what he did. And then, Modric obviously doing his thing, jukes two players in the box, ends up, scoring. And then, of course, Eden Hazard, with an amazing play as well, ends up getting his third goal, which he was actually the one who assisted, made a great run into the box and assisted Modric, put Modric into the position to score. So assisted the first goal and actually gets the third goal. So, they looked better in the second half. Now, speaking of Eden Hazard, I think that's the thing. Eden Hazard can possibly be that false nine, that backup number 9, if he continues to show that growth, and if we can see him play like he played today. If we can see him play like he played today, then I think we'll be okay. We'll be safe. I won't say it's ideal. Obviously, I agree with all of you that this should have been addressed. It was one of the glaring problems that Real Madrid had. We should have a backup number 9 that isn't named Mariano, because Mariano doesn't bring anything to the table really at all, in my opinion. And so essentially, and then the one guy that you kind of did have that I think could bring something, which was Mayoral. You loan him out. So essentially it was kind of like there was no forethought of what could possibly happen. Now, but at the end of the day, I think one of the things, the arguments was, we're going into this season with a worse team. I don't think that at all. I think we're going in with a better defense and a better midfield than we even had last season. And the defense is where we were lacking. And I think we're coming in and we're more solid there than we were last season. Obviously, Dani Carvajal has to stay, who was one of the best players on the pitch today in the game against Celtic. He has to stay healthy, which is a very, very tall order, because the likes of Lucas Vázquez haven't shown that they can stay healthy. I'm sorry, that they can deputize that position when Carvajal is out. But we have other guys there. Rudiger has been sort of like a jack of all trades in that sense, being able to play. He's played the left back position. He's played the right back position. He's played a center back position. So we'll see what happens, because I think the reason Ancelotti feels that he can use him there is because essentially, since Rudiger was playing as a back three, then and he's quick, and so far, I've liked what I've seen from him. I think the guy is an absolute madman, and I think he can help us in that. But is he obviously a right back? No. Is he going to have the quality of Dani Carvajal? No, not at all. But is he going to be gritty and strong and try to take, and be defensive? Yes. But is he going to help us in the attacking third? No. So is he going to give us the defensive stability, but then also the attacking stability? No. But that's the same thing we suffer when we have Mendy, who's not a huge help at all when it comes to attacking, and is really just more solid defensively. So, in the end of the day, I said overall, I really do believe that this is a better team now than we saw last season. The problem is, of course, you have one position that's really, really, really hanging by a thread, and that is the number 9 position. What happens if Benzema is not there? If Benzema is not there, you have to put in somebody like Rodrigo as a number 9, who Rodrigo obviously has proved that he is a solid player. So let's not I would say shit on the things that Rodrigo was able to do last season. I think he's really growing into a phenomenal player, and I think the player that I always has thought he was, which I feel like he is a better. Well, now not so much better than Vinicius, but I think he can be just as good as a finisher as Vinicius. He has beautiful. I mean, he knows how to, like, when he crosses the ball, he does very well. He set up plays, and he is a player that comes in and in the clutch scores goals. So I think Rodrigo is a great option there. And then, like, once again, and I hope it's something that doesn't come back and bite us. Is can a player like Eden Hazard, make a difference? And I really think he can. I really think he can. I hope he can. I hope he continues to play like he did today. I really think this game that he did, this game that he played today, really is, I think, a burst of confidence. It helps him, obviously, getting the goal, helps him getting the assist, helps him. The team really, seemingly, it seems like the team, is totally, on board with him, are pushing him. Even Tony Kroos saying after the game that it's never been a question of quality for him. It's been a question of fitness. It's been a question, I think, of different other things surrounding him, injuries, all this kind of stuff. Maybe mentally he just wasn't ready there yet. But the question of quality, was never a question. And I think that's what we're beginning to see. I really do think that Eden Hazard can bring something to the team. Now, it's a question of what. I don't want people to, bash me and say, do you really, I don't believe it's going to be the Eden Hazard of old. It's not going to be the Eden Hazard of Chelsea. It's not going to be the Eden Hazard of old. I really think it's going to be a much more subdued Eden Hazard. But I think if he gets going and gets his confidence back with the way he can dribble, with the way he can make penetrating runs, essentially, I really feel like he can. Is he going to have the same speed that he had before? No. But I really feel like he does offer something there once he gets, because what we were seeing with Eden Hazard is it seemed like he had lost the, like I always say, the word gun shy, not gun shy in the sense that he wouldn't take a shot on goal, but gun shy in the sense that he was worried about going for the dribble, going and taking on players. Probably because he's, been injured in the past that way. He's worried about his ankle. He was worried about his ankle. Those kind of things, I think, were causing him a problem mentally. And those things would hold him back in his footballing ability, but from a mental perspective, not because he didn't have the quality to do it. So hopefully we can see that. But this whole idea that we have a worse team than last season, I don't believe that. I do believe we have the same desire, the same passion. I think we have better chemistry. We have more experience, especially these young kids that actually won it last season, these newer players that ended up winning it last season, and sort of shaking the cobweb off there experience-wise. I really think that going into this season, that is going to help. The problem is, just like all of you, I do believe that there is an issue on our right wing, because aside from Rodrigo, unless Eden Hazard all of a sudden blows up, I don't think Asensio is going to bring anything new to the table. Hopefully he does. Let me be wrong. I mean, in the past, I used to love this guy. I think a lot of us did. We thought he was the next big thing, but he hasn't been able to duplicate that. What we saw when he first started with Real Madrid. And so really without Rodrigo, you do lack that. And then you have Valverde that you can put in that position. And I think he can manage that position, but he is much more, obviously a huge asset when you put him in the midfield, especially considering if you have a midfield with Valverde, Camavinga, and Tchouaméni. But the thing is, I think one of the issues right now with Valverde is it's kind of like Valverde is cycling between Rodrigo and the midfield if Modric isn't playing. Because I think what it is if Modric is playing like this at 36 years old, you know that this isn't going to last forever. And essentially, you kind of got to, it kind of sucks that you got to say that, but you got to get as much out of him and help make it. I mean, if he's playing and he's being, and he's really helping out and doing great things, Modric in this case, then I wouldn't sit him down, especially, I would conserve his minutes, but you're not going to, sit him down when he's absolutely the creative magician that he has been, and just lose that. Luka Modric is a huge asset to this team right now. He's kind of like another Benzema that without him, the team suffers a bit. The only thing is, obviously, he's got quite a few people that can back him up. Something that Benzema does not have. So I don't agree with Madridistas that say we're a worse off team. I do agree with the idea that we should have signed somebody new, at least for those to strengthen and to have more squad depth in the attack, because that's where we lack squad depth. But I think this team, as they have shown us already before, has the grit, has the ability, and now has the experience. I think now they have more backup in the defense. They have more backup in the midfield to really take this further. And we don't know, if we can extend this out into the January window. Hopefully in January we do bring somebody. It could be that, Florentino is conserving, biding his time because of the fact that it's a crazy, crazy season this year with the World Cup. So who knows what is going to happen with that. Obviously, I don't want to get ahead of myself or any of us to get excited, because at the same time, we've gotten excited in transfer windows before with Real Madrid and nothing really happens. We do get good players. We can't say that we don't get players. We've gotten the likes of Camavinga. We've gotten the likes of Tchouaméni. We've gotten the likes of Rudiger, but it's just that one, eye-popping, I think, really show-stopping player. We have not been able to get him. We put all our eggs in the basket for Mbappé. And I really think where we lost out there was not bringing in somebody like Haaland, who obviously at this point I feel, I don't even like Manchester City. I despise that team. But I watch Man City now because I just want to see Haaland succeed. I want to see how many goals this guy can bang in. And considering Mbappé is probably the other guy on this spectrum of, who's one of the top players in the world right now, but the fact that he played Real Madrid the way he did it, I'd much rather go for Haaland, and I think Haaland would be a beast in LaLiga, considering his, the way he can muscle defenders, the way he can, the way he can score, and the service that he would get on our team, just the way he's getting at Man City. I think we'd be able to provide him that. And with the teams that we have, with the teams that he would have to face in La Liga, I really feel like, defense-wise, he would be a nightmare for a lot of defenders in La Liga. If he's doing it already in the Premier League, he'll do it in La Liga as well, and he'll be a nightmare for Real Madrid as well, with Real Madrid. So that's the one player I hope one day comes to the team, now more than ever. I really, as much as people say, will you forgive Mbappe? In a few years, everyone will forget. I don't know, man. I mean, at least not for me. Not for me. I mean, if he's a great player, I'd love to bring him, but I think he's going to take a long time for him to really win people back, and that's if they even let him. Even if they let him back in the game. Real Madrid's board or whatever is going to do that. I think they would probably go to Haaland first, and I think that's the plan. And I would love for that to happen down the line, if it does happen. You never know. Sometimes what sort of diamond in the rough we haven't seen is going to show up in the next couple of years. I think that probably right now what we need is a backup for Benzema, and I really do. Once again, I don't know why it's in my head. It's stuck in my head. But I like Raúl de Tomás. I really like him as a player. I think he had a great season last season with Espanyol. And when it comes to being a deputizing or being a backup to a player like Benzema, I really think he does offer something there. I really feel like he would be a good backup, somebody that's willing to do it. That's my thoughts. So like I said, I was going to keep this one short because it's been a while since I've been back, and I really wanted to do one after the Champions League game, kind of tell you guys what was going on. And, I'm back for this one. We're going to bring, I'm going to try to bring in Trombach and Halal back soon on the podcast so we can do sort of a review of everything that we've been doing. And that's about it. I think for now, that's really all I have to say. Remember, guys, to, subscribe at Nada Más Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. It's at YNM Podcast. So remember to do that on social media. And, the other thing as well is, you also want to remember to do subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to the Nada Más Podcast on YouTube. Because that's where you can see the video version of the podcast, and also subscribe to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever your podcasts are found. So if you're not listening to us right now and you're watching the YouTube, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, everywhere your favorite podcasts are found. And if you are listening to us and want to see the video version, check us out on, of course, on YouTube. Okay. So thank you very much for listening, guys. I will talk to you again soon this weekend. After the game against Mallorca, I will record that podcast, and we're going to keep this going. So thank you very much for listening again. And we are back for this, 2022-2023 season. Thank you very much for listening. Talk to you again soon.